Okay, welcome Year 8. Today we are looking at why we should be critical of the media. So we're going to look specifically today at why we should be critical of the media and their representations, and also why media constructs those representations and positions us as the audience in a certain way. So these are some of the keywords that you are going to need to know today. It is important that you also write these or add these into your glossary at the back of your academic notebook. You do not need to write these down now as long as you write them down at the end. So the keywords we're looking at are audience positioning. Now this means the effect of techniques used by the text creator to influence the audience's opinions on people, places, or things. Our next word is constructs. So these are a range of different elements, both visual and written, that build and create a certain representation of a subject that is not based on evidence, but rather the creator's intended opinion. We then have our target audience. So this is a particular group at which the text is aimed. So who is the text supposed to be for? Then we have our agenda. Our agenda is an aim or reason for doing something. We have the word perspective, which is a specific attitude or point of view on a person, place, or thing. And lastly, bias, an inclination or prejudice for or against one person or group, especially in a way considered to be unfair. So that's more so your personal opinion and how you think that is pushed on to others. So why do we need to be critical of media texts? We might consider that because people may disguise opinions for facts, so they try and convince us that things that they believe are factual without any evidence. We might say because they may be a level of bias in the text, that because text creators may have an agenda or a purpose behind why they're trying to get us to agree with them. And lastly, because everyone interprets things differently, and these interpretations are going to differ based on our own cultural attitudes, values, and beliefs. So you definitely need to write these two things down. These are the two main points as to why we need to be critical of media texts. We need to understand that people interpret media texts in different ways. This depends on their cultural background, economic standing, or personal experiences. So we are all capable of interpreting texts in different ways. The second thing is that audience members can play an active role in decoding the messages of a text, and that we are capable of changing these messages. We have the ability to see in between the lines and to see past people's bias if we are able to critically analyse media texts. So make sure you have these two things written down. Remember, there's a pencil in the bottom right-hand corner. So what is a fact and what is an opinion? Most of these words you would have heard of before. A fact is something that is known or proven to be true. It has evidence to support it. We know that there is no opinion or bias put behind that. Whereas an opinion is someone's point of view or judgment formed about something that isn't necessarily based on fact or knowledge. We don't always have to have evidence to back up an opinion. It's more so someone's personal point of view. Now, when we compare fact and opinion, we need to look for specific words, specific phrases, or techniques that help us decipher what should we consider to be factual and what should we be more critical of because it is someone's opinion. So having a look at these two headlines, our first one says that government reduces payments to low-income one-parent families. Now, a headline on the exact same topic from a different article says, government slashes support for impoverished single mothers. Now, if we compare these, how do we decipher what is fact and what is opinion? In our first headline, we have the word reduces. Now, reduces is simply just a statement that payments or the income or the amount of money that's being given has been reduced. It doesn't say by how much. It's not a hyperbole. It's not over-exaggerating. It's simply stating that payments have been lowered. The second part says low income. It's not necessarily identifying one specific type of group. It's not identifying people who are living in poverty. It's not identifying people who work in certain industries. It's just stating people who have low income. And lastly, one-parent families. Not talking about specific parent, just families that have one parent for whatever reason. This would be a factual headline. This isn't influencing any sort of bias or any sort of opinion. It is just telling us the decision that's been made by the government. If we have a look at this second headline, this is slightly different. It uses the word slashes. Now, this is an emotive choice of language, inferring that they have taken away a significant amount of money from these people. They have slashed support. Impoverished implies that we are targeting quite a vulnerable group, a group of people who have now been put in this predicament or in this situation that they really shouldn't be. And lastly, single mothers. So we have picked or singled out a specific group of people, particularly mothers. That is because when we talk about opinion, they may be wanting us to see mothers as more vulnerable than maybe fathers. And also we're looking at single mothers, so mothers who are parenting children by themselves. So we're made to feel sorry for them. So how have we been positioned as the audience? Looking again at the same headline we looked at before, the use of emotive language is making us feel certain emotions towards the topic. Words like impoverished or slash make us sympathise with the group that we're talking about. It uses phrases such as single mother, and that is really pinpointing or distinguishing a specific vulnerable group for us to empathise with. Lastly, the word impoverished might position the audience to view the government as evil or cruel or unkind for placing those innocent, vulnerable single mothers in a disadvantaged situation. So we can summarise how we've been positioned as the audience. We can say that therefore by reading this headline, we've been positioned to view the government as cruel for taking away thought to be necessary funds from vulnerable groups. This is the opinion of the text, and it is the opinion of that writer and not based on fact. Like the other headline has given us, it's given us factual language. This headline has given us emotive language. So as readers, we need to be critical to ensure we don't allow our own emotions and values to cloud our judgment, that we looked for the fact rather than the opinion. So how do we know when we are being critical? There are 5 questions that we should always be asking ourselves when we read text. We should ask, is this text a fact or an opinion? We should ask, how does the author want me to feel about this topic? Whose opinion is being told? Whose voice is not being heard? And why should we be critical of this text? How is our opinion being influenced by somebody else's bias? So, just to reiterate, if you haven't already written these down, 1, we need to be critical of media text because we interpret media text in different ways, and this is largely depending on our cultural background, our economic standings and personal experiences. And 2, that audience members can play an active role in decoding messages. We have the ability to change our opinions and take away from text different messages than what are intended by the author. So if you haven't already written down these words in the back of your book, please make sure that you add these to your glossary. Now you're going to go onto Compass, you're going to find the activity sheet. There is an example there for you, and you are going to be answering those 5 important questions we looked at before towards a range of different texts. Make sure you are writing in full sentences and submit your answers to Compass when you are finished.